I'm joined here today with Mark Shapiro in Mark's house.
What up, Pauly? Good to have you here, sir.
Oh, man, thank you for having me. And so, I'm so excited to have you on the show. So I met Mark through a friend, a mutual friend, Gita.
Shout out Gita. I actually haven't met her in person yet.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, dude,
she's a digital friend.
You're in for a treat. Yeah, she's beautiful. And so Gita introduced us and was like, you two just need to meet. And so we ended up meeting, what was that cafe around the corner from here?
Yes, the French Market.
Shout out to the French Market. That's your local.
Great.
Yeah. And went down there and I know one thing led to another and we started this little bromance.
It was such a good conversation. I mean, we got into it right away.
I wouldn't expect anything less from you and me.
No, I know.
And so, we had this great conversation and then ever since then we've just been on the same frequency, I think. And it's just exciting to find more people in this world who are up to the same stuff and who have the same intention and the same passion. More hands makes light work. Mm-hmm. So it's awesome. So
Amen.
So, obviously the show we're on is, Art and Science as our podcast. And, the Art and Science explores the duality of life. The ins and the outs and the love and the fear and the heaven and the hell, the right and the wrong. And all the suffering that lives in between that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate that you do that because oftentimes we're just searching for happiness, and that includes like not allowing ourselves to be sad or only allowing ourselves to have fun and not conveying how we really feel. So to me, like, I don't look at authenticity. That's kind of like one of my buzzwords that I use. I have a site called Are You Being Real? And it's like authenticity is not black and white.
Yeah.
Right. There is that duality that sometimes it's easier to be ourselves than other times. Maybe it's based on our external environment. Maybe it's like who we're talking to or like the specific challenge that we're facing in that given moment. So to me, it's like it really counts when there's something at stake. That's when it's most important and most challenging to be authentic. So it's not like a black and white. Yes, I'm authentic. No, I'm not.
Totally. What I love about the duality conversation is, we all have a position. There's this sort of idea that, once you are positional in life, you immediately create the opposite state.
All right.
Right. So immediately there's something that this is right. There's immediately a wrong. Right. And so then you go and meet these people in life, and all the people who agree with you are good people, and all the people who don't are bad people. Yeah. Those who agree with you, they're your friend, and then those who are not, like they're your enemy. And even that's a duality. Mm-hmm. And all you're ever experiencing is this constant suffering and fight between the two, and realizing. And so the duality also exists in the world of like, I'm a good person versus a bad person. Mm-hmm. And there's this belief that, I look at it as a spectrum.
Yeah, that's not fair.
There's good and bad.
Totally.
Because we're both good and bad.
Yeah.
We're both selfish and we're generous. And we're both, vengeful and we're loving. Mm-hmm. And as you pointed out, the binary nature of it can make one right, make one wrong. And often that includes ourselves. So making ourselves right here, making ourselves wrong there.
It gets really meta when any argument that we're stating, like even this conversation, is kind of in a way taking away from the duality.
Totally. And in itself can be positional.
I know,
yeah, totally. And I love that because, obviously we're here in LA and I've spent the last 8 years in the Bay, and, this part of the world can consider itself, more immersed in this kind of work. Mm-hmm. But you can also discover a lot of people here who are also positional about that. Mm-hmm. Have an ego mind around, I'm Zen. And I practice mindfulness and I'm really mindful. And there's still an ego mind around being mindful versus not mindful. Mm-hmm. And so then they beat themselves up when they're not mindful. There's a wrongness in that.
Can I share a little story? It's kind of funny. Please. I was at an event, this is probably like 2 weeks ago, and a really close friend of mine came up to me at the event and asked me a weird question, which is, how many people here are truly enlightened and have seen the other side?
Yeah, right.
And I'm like thinking to myself, well, what kind of question is that? First of all, like, how can you really know the answer to that? And I'm like, I don't know. How many do you think? And there were probably like 60 people at this event. And he said, and it was at Habitas in Venice. And so like naturally, I think like the people who are there, people who go to Burning Man, mm-hmm. who I would say have placed mindfulness and consciousness. Like those are words that they'd actually use. So that's just a little context as to who is there. And he said, oh, there are probably 4 people. I'm like, okay. Okay, that's your truth. 4 people are enlightened or have seen the other side. And I'm like, and are you one of them? Of course. Like, no hesitation. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. So what I thought was so interesting about that is here he is judging other people based on their enlightenment, but saying, yes, I have seen the other side and I'm enlightened.
Yeah.
And to me, like I can only look at that conversation from my own eyes and thinking with my own judgments that if I'm judging somebody else's enlightenment, how enlightened am I?
Yeah, very good. We have I have this coach, and one of the concepts that she talks about is love, right? And that there is there's nothing to do with love. There's no way to there's no engineering or strategy needed. Like love is all that's left when there's no more judgment or fear. Mm-hmm. And whenever there's this sort of judging piece or a fear or I make wrong or I'm a better than or a comparative nature, like the inherent nature is that this doesn't mention it's not love. It's just a limited version of it. It's not unlimited, unconditional love. The love that we talk about, which is love is abundance, love is God, love is just like love, Well, it's not. It's the like, well, if you loved me, Mark, then you would, ... which is conditional. Yeah. And it's interesting you say that because, that's been my experience a lot as well. It's that, and for what it's worth, I've been one of those people too.
Me too.
I've been it's the I'm better than you, or these people are idiots or whatever, and me discovering in my own path the limitation of that, and then suddenly realizing like, well, I'm only 35 years old. What the hell do I know? Who's to say that my version of reality in the realm of 7 billion versions of reality is the right one? And is the one that's the benchmark that all people should be held against.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. I found myself being quick to judge things as good, bad, right or wrong, a lot of the times in reference to myself. And an example could be if I had 10 things that I wanted to accomplish in a given day and I accomplished 9 of them.
Yep.
And there was one thing that I didn't accomplish. If that one thing that I didn't accomplish, if I deemed that to be the most important thing of the day, I'd look at the day as a failure.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, well, look at the stats here. Look at the science. You get 90%, 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
That's a success, right?
Yeah.
By most metrics and standards. And because I put a greater weight to the one thing, it was a bad day.
Interesting.
And so the reason why I share that is there was a time when I challenged myself not to say good, bad, right or wrong. And instead use more descriptive language to paint more of the full picture, because oftentimes I'm boxing myself into a one-word answer, which I think there's comfort and certainty and in that, and like feeling like you know who you are and where you stand when you can take everything and lump it down to one word. I'm good right now. Like I'm having a tough time and I'm having a bad day. When if we don't let ourselves judge ourselves or judge others with just one word and allow ourselves to be more descriptive, why is it good? Or what does the full picture look like? There's so much more available.
Yeah, I love that. What I hear in that, and how often we are not rigorous with the language we use. So
you wrote a blog post about it.
Yeah. And we do these when we've done these corporate workshops. Help companies and startups sort of articulate their culture and articulate like who are they really. You've got this collection of individuals in a room and they're all up to doing something. The company originally started out as like, we want to go and change this or improve this thing in the world. And 6 months later, their experience of life is fighting and surviving each other. And it's so far away from what they're actually out to do in the world. And now it's about, Jeremy in the 11 o'clock marketing meeting. I hate Jeremy. He's an idiot, and that's their experience of life. And it's often when we talk about the breakdowns that happen in between these relationships, and it's not just at work, it's your personal relationships, your friendships. It's, I can say, hey, I feel disrespected, or you don't respect me, or I want you to respect me, or just the word respect. And I have an elaborate definition of respect in my head that I might not even be consciously aware of. As do you, and it may be different. And you'd be like, what are you talking about? I didn't disrespect you, because you're comparing to your model of respect. And how these people how we all, not just people, we all bang into each other because we lack the rigor in taking the time to go, okay, what do I actually mean by that? And I'm just calling it respect. But what I actually mean is that, when, we agree to catch up and then you're late, I have a relationship to, feeling like, you don't respect and value my time, and my time is valued to me, and blah, blah, blah. And there's not an actual conversation around that. And so it's interesting you sort of say that, because I hear that there's a opportunity to be more rigorous with the language that you but to access that, you really have to slow down and look at like what's the feeling going on here, and why does it feel this way, and like okay,
yeah, freedom in the language.
Totally, yeah, freedom in the language. It's interesting, I think it's a challenge we have in society where we're moving towards more emojis, the short form communication, and we almost see long form communication or words, whatever, as sort of like a burden or inefficient.
Yeah.
And yet we all, here's what I've discovered in all this work. Everybody wants to be gotten. Everyone wants to be understood. Even the people who sit there and go, wow, this conversation's too deep or too many words or blah, blah, blah. If they have the perceived feeling of being wronged, they'll talk about it forever. Because there's an experience in them that wants to be gotten, wants to be acknowledged, wants to be seen, wants to be heard. And I think it's just interesting that, are we, as a hypothetical question, stunting ourselves by removing this relationship to the language and being okay with the duality and actually inspecting that and therefore causing our own suffering?
That's really interesting. I think there's duality in that answer.
Totally. I love how it's just, it's gone like down this rabbit hole.
I love that. I'd say from one perspective, expressing how we feel in the form of an emoji or 140 characters or less, and sometimes even at the cost of having a face-to-face conversation. I mean, how much gets taken out of context?
Totally.
It's, with social media and a text, there's so many times when I have gotten the other person's, like, what their come from is so wrong just based on whatever story I'm telling myself about what the text says or whatnot. So I think when looking at it from that perspective, yeah, it's dangerous. It causes a lot of wasted energy, a lot of wasted time when we're communicating, whether it's with a medium that doesn't allow someone to fully see us, or, if words are misconstrued. But then on the flip side, it also challenges us to be more direct and poignant with the way that we express ourselves. In a way that we utilize our language in the most powerful way possible. Okay. So, and in a way, emojis can perhaps, just throwing it out there, could express more than a word.
Okay, like the picture,
right? And it could be, words? And it could be, it could be something in terms of like, I feel more expressed with an emoji than putting words on something. Or maybe my audience, maybe they're a visual, more emotional learner. Maybe an emoji would be better for them. So I choose to most of the time overshare. That's something that I do. And I'm also someone that usually would choose words. And I think emojis can be fun as well. Totally. So I kind of see it. Yeah, I see it from both sides.
Okay. Yeah.
I guess it's what's the come from.
Totally. Yeah. What's the context?
Like, are you like, when I'm putting something out there, am I looking to fully express and let myself be seen? Or am I hiding behind the words? Am I hiding behind the emojis?
Yeah, cool. So what I see in that is the duality. Here's what I love about duality. Yeah. There's nothing inherently wrong about either position.
Yeah.
But it's when you get positional. Yeah. In the sense that you get attached to that position and you make the opposite position wrong, then you experience the limitation of it. So you're right. It's a good, and I appreciate you being rigorous on that because you're right. Like there are times where an emoji works,
or I'm wrong. Yeah,
and there we go. To be really rigorous. But then at the other end of the spectrum, sometimes you need a long form thing, and there's a context and there's a situation for both. And I think when we create a situation where we are only about emojis or only about the long form, that we just experience this limitation. Yeah. We experience that there's a limited nature. Here I'm misunderstood, and here I'm possibly misunderstood as well.
Yeah, I think relationships is a good metaphor.
Yeah, that's really
where
good.
You've got some people that are constantly running away from relationships because maybe they're scared of getting abandoned or losing themselves in the relationship, so they run away. And then there's other people who want a relationship so bad that they're so needy and anxious about it that they'll stay in a relationship that might not be good for them because they just want the relationship so bad. So that to me is the duality right there in full display. And it's the healthy point would probably be somewhere in the middle, where the needy person's stepping into more of a secure space that like, I don't need this other person to be happy. and I love spending time with them. It's a bonus. And then the other person who likes to run away, that they will trust that by staying in it, that they'll reap the benefits of love versus running away from it.
Yeah, totally. That's a good segue, because I want to... So one of the things we talk about in the realm of art and science is, you know, the science is the knowing and the doing of things, you know, and we have a society that really indexes heavily on that. Like, what do you know? What have you done? What are you doing? What haven't you done? You know, what do you need to know? And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, you know, because that's in the doing and the doing and the knowing, like we know and do great things. On the other side of that, though, then there's also the art, right? Which is the feeling and the being. And, you know, at Bold and Resolute, we're very, you know, big on having people discover both of these things and understand the relationship between the two. It's yin and yang. It's like, which is more important, the table or the legs? You know, it's like, well, it's not, without legs, it's just a piece of wood on the floor, right? It's not actually serving as a table, but just legs and there's nothing to put. So it's this relationship where there's nothing wrong with the science and the knowing, the doing, but there is also this relationship to the art, which is who we're being and how we feel about things. And so the way we often refer to, you know, whether it's a workplace culture or a relationship or interaction, right? It's not just the science of, hey, we put a group of people together, we put on a grill, we got some wine, we got some food, we got some people in a room. You know, we know that, okay, well, that's the science of having a party and put some music on. But then the art of having a party is the vibe. And it's the energy. And, you know, it's got a good energy or a good vibe about it. I'd love to pick your brain.
Sure.
Because, you know, the work that you do is about having people also discover this for themselves. Like, look beyond what's in front of them and actually look a little further and go, okay, but what's powering this? You know, beyond maybe just what may seem literally there. And it's this exploration of saying, okay, well, yeah, there is the science of all the things we do, but what's your experience of life like? And how in tune with that are you? You know, and are you there just to look good or just to go through the motions to get it done because that's the expectation? And what is your relationship to yourself here in saying, even though that's an option, it's not what I actually feel like. It's not what I actually want to do. And so it's in the world of this language, it's that language we tell to ourselves. And so I don't really know what the entry point is here. I'm so excited to talk with you about this that I'm bounding with energy. So yeah, what do you think?
There's the duality for sure, because I think that you can't simply just be without having a direction in which you want to go in and taking the steps. So I think that there's definitely having a system or having a protocol, which to me is more the science and the mechanism and the system is obviously important, as is the being, because if you're just following the system, then you can get lost in that system and not be who you need to be to actively, you know, navigate through the roadblocks that pop up. So how does that pertain to like a real life situation? So for me, like probably most of us, I want to be super successful in my business and in life. You know, for business and professional, I want to support as many people as I possibly can in terms of living authentic lives that they're proud of, spending their time the way that, you know, you really want to spend your time and not wasting your time doing things that aren't important to you. Having, you know, a job that really is fulfilling at the end of the day and isn't just about money, something that you like really feel good about. So those are like some things. I want to make a lot of money with that so I can live the lifestyle of my choice. I want to meet a beautiful woman, and I want to have an amazing, gorgeous family that we can raise together, and I want that relationship to go the distance. So those are some things that I want, and there's a lot of things that I could do to get clients and to grow the business and to, you know, spread my mission. There's also things that I could do to call in that love. I could go on dates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So to me, that's all more of like, okay, this is what I want. And there's like the science behind it. There's different things that I can do to bring those things ultimately into my life. But if I'm not allowing myself to express, if I'm not being in the art of who I am, the being, then the result that I generate is not going to be in sync with what I actually truly desire. And I had a real situation earlier this year where I burnt out. I was working so hard, both professionally and personally, like that I found myself working 12 plus hours a day 7 days a week. And I loved what I did. And I also hit a wall when I wasn't getting the results that I wanted to get. And so what I realized in that moment is that I was making it so much about the science, so much about the doing, that I wasn't allowing myself to be my best. And when I'm at my best, I'm free, I'm expressed, and I'm happy.
I love it.
So I was, I think I had them in the wrong order. And it makes sense to me why I did have them in the other order, because it's counterintuitive to focus on the being over the doing, because of kind of the example I said earlier, that if you're only focusing on feeling good, where the hell are you going to go? You can't just like focus necessarily on feeling good conceptually and all of a sudden make a lot of money. That doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
But what I realized, Pauly, is that if I choose my happiness and prioritize friendships and health and sleeping and taking care of myself, if I'm a happier person when I go to work, I'm going to be putting much more joy and love into everything that I do. And it comes with a greater sense of ease, as well as like, let's just talk about like attraction. And I'm not talking about romantic attraction, but we want to be around other people that make our lives easier, that bring more joy and love into our lives. So I'm way more effective in work and in life when I'm expressed, when I'm in my artist. Thank you for that.
Well, I love you.
I love you too.
It's beautiful.
Thanks.
It's beautiful.
That was fun.
Oh, it's inspired. I got tears in my eyes.
Yeah.
You know, what I love about that is, I'm always sort of distilling, I suppose. And what I distilled from that is, there's always going to be results.
Yeah.
There's always a result.
Yeah.
And there's always, you're doing something or not, and the results are produced by what you do or you don't do.
Yeah.
And so at what point do you actually choose consciously what it is you want to do and what result you actually want, as opposed to the result you don't want? And it's funny, I had this conversation with a friend of mine only this morning before we connected, and it was the paradigm of playing not to lose versus playing to win. Mm-hmm. It's people who say, I have a lot of people who lie to me. Everyone's lying to me in my life, or everyone's running me around, or I can't trust anyone. And you sort of go, okay, what are you looking for in life? And what actions do you take? And what is your context? And it's the experience that everyone is only moments away from lying to you. Everyone's a liar, and it's a matter of trying to find a non-liar. And so your experience of life is that, well, not only do you find lies, but do you create lies? Do you create the opportunity for people to lie to you? And so it's this interesting thing where it's like shifting the result isn't just shifting the action. Mm-hmm. It's also shifting your relationship to the action, or the relationship to the result, which is saying, well, and it's this difference between saying, so like, let's choose a relationship one, for instance, right? There is the fear of being alone, and which is the fear of, and then there is a love of creating something with someone amazing. Right. Now, if you say that, like, well, okay, so is it that you don't want, are you afraid of being alone, or do you want to create something with someone amazing? Many people go, well, it's the same thing. I want the same thing. Well, it's not. One's playing not to lose, one's playing to win. And shifting that context was saying, here's what I want to create for my life. Here's the intention that I have. Here's the result that I'd love to produce. And so I realize, in order to produce that result, I need to sort of start with, how do I want to relate to life? And how do I want to relate to that result? And how do I want to relate to myself and relate to others? Which then dictates the actions that I take, which is more likely than produce the consistency. I mean, even our friendship as an example. 7 billion people in the world. How do we meet each other? It's not a shock or a surprise. It's not coincidence, right? It's both in who we're being, and this beautiful design in the universe that people and other people want to connect those things. Like, it's our human mind to be like play Legos, like, I want to connect that. And so And so people are already going to do that. So if you're being negative, they'll connect you with that. And it's this interesting thing where it's like, all I got from that was, that there's always a result. And you're always going to do something or not do something. So how are you choosing from love, or are you choosing from fear? Another duality. And so it's interesting, so I'd love to talk about your work.
Sure.
Because I think in your work, you no doubt meet a lot of this. and I know that you've, in your past, you've coached plenty of people. You now have, your Are You Being Real podcast. You have to have 192 episodes.
Correct. Yeah.
Whew, that's impressive. And, in these conversations, you're really exploring this, like what is the truth?
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah.
And are you really telling this truth, or are you telling a version of it because it's easier? And I think in that there is that relationship to the fear and love. There is that relationship to the playing not to lose versus playing to win. There's that relationship to context and actions and the results. And so, I'd love to hear one of the most moving interviews you've done, where you really, this inspired you, like you felt re-inspired and reconnected with the work that you're doing.
Sure. So for me, when I look back at the body of work and the 192 episodes, my favorite ones are the ones where I felt most connected to my guest or to the subject matter in general. So how do I feel most connected to the guest? We see each other. How do we see each other? We actually open up and we discuss our shared humanity. And what I mean by that is letting people see some of our hidden truths, some of the things that, we dream about or that we're scared of, and like really having a deep, meaningful conversation that allows us to like, oh, I get you. You're just like me. And I love you for that. And so to me, those are usually my favorite episodes, when I'm like, wow, I feel like I'm with this person for the entirety of the 50 or 60 minutes. The episodes that I don't think are as good, and now it's all subjective.
Yeah, right.
We all have our own opinions. I've had people tell me that their favorite episode was an episode that during the interview, I'm like, when's this one going to end? This one doesn't feel that good for me. But what felt good for me is when I was connected to the guest, when we felt in sync, when we had like a really nice flow. So to me, those are the most profound things. In terms of one particular episode that I want to tout, it actually wasn't an interview. It was a solo episode. It's the one that I released a couple weeks ago. That was a 40-minute tell-all about my love life, where I really shared a lot of intimate details about my love history, about going on 100 first dates, where I'm at right now, how I think I'll know when I call this amazing woman into my life, yada, yada, yada. But the reason why it was so powerful for me was not sharing each of those individual stories. It was really putting my whole neurotic self, like airing my internal narrative externally. I felt like it was so incredibly liberating to share all of these stories that I run on repeat in my head externally. It was cathartic for me to do. It really, by stating it out loud and exposing it publicly, it was like, wow, this is such an opportunity for me to really own my truth, perhaps once and for all, but like to really look at how I've been in the past and be like, all right, I'm sharing this into the world, and now I have a new moment to choose who I'm going to be, how I'm going to proceed moving forward. And the reason why I share this story is because it gave me so much clarity. What I've continuously found, and this is just one example of that when I have the courage to go somewhere where I haven't been willing to go before, or have the courage to share something that I've never shared before, whatever hold that has on me, maybe I don't even know that it has a hold on me, but by releasing it, it creates space for new things to come in and new creativity. So, with the Are You Being Real podcast and brand, after being so open in this last episode, it set a new standard. It set a new bar for what the show is and what the show can be. In that, yes, I have guests who come on and share great tips and tricks as to how you can live an authentic life. But to me, that's not what makes the show unique. What makes the show unique is the guests coming on and sharing themselves with the audience. So we can see each other and we can be like, oh yeah, I'm just like that. And then the guests, if they want, they can share their tips and tricks and, whatever. But it's really like I now look at like the Are You Being Real podcast as a coming out of sorts. It doesn't have to be about sexuality. You don't have to tell your deepest, darkest secret, but it's owning something that maybe you're ashamed about of who you are, something that's just a hidden truth that you haven't said publicly or you haven't explored, and just letting it out there and seeing what happens and allowing other people to benefit from that as well. Maybe it's inspiring. Maybe the other person doesn't feel as alone in the story that, you know, that they're telling themselves. And it's just so funny that after giving this 40-minute tell-all about my love life, and I'm sitting here terrified, being like, I'm going to be met with judgment. People are going to think I'm crazy. The 100 women that I've gone on first dates with, what are they going to think of me? I'm like, I cared a lot about what they thought of me, because I'm like, I'm making them into a number by saying you're one of 100, when this is like a person. And like, I built relationships, like friendships with some of these women that I went out with. So I was like nervous about that going into it, and like thinking that like, wow, no one's going to care, or people are going to like outcast me, and it's going to like be like bad. No, it was the opposite of that. Even people who I'd gone on dates with were thanking me for the podcast and being like, oh my God, like I relate so much. I had men, I had women relating to it. I also had people say, yeah, nothing you shared seemed that crazy.
You know what I love about that story?
Go for it. Yeah.
And I've had this experience for myself, so this is why I feel connected to it.
Yeah.
Everything you stand for is on the table.
Yeah.
Possibly for the first time. You know, there's something that you're always able to keep a little bit away. And suddenly now you put yourself fully out there, your philosophy at test. Everything you stand for and everything that you feel strongly about is suddenly now like, that's it. And I think there is a transition in life, in people's experience of life, when they embody what they stand for. Not just intellectualize it, not just say it, not just do it, but be it. You know, and what I heard in that was you having a choice, a conscious choice between your intention about what you want to create with Are You Being Real and your ego mind. And the fear of looking bad, and the fear of not being good enough, the fear of being judged, the fear and choosing, okay, well, I could choose that path, which means I get to win, I get to be right, you know, but I don't necessarily get to share myself fully. And the other option is that everything I say I stand for, about being real and being authentic and just being fully self-expressed. And everything that I know you personally create and hold space for others. Okay, I'm faced with a choice here. What do I want to choose? Knowing that there may be a consequence in telling the whole truth. And you know that because you say that to other people, right? Like, it doesn't mean everyone's going to be like, great stuff. There might be some pushback, but at some point, you know for yourself, well, that's the whole truth. And so I just want to acknowledge you. That's beautiful.
Thank you, brother. Yeah. So, it's helped me just really zero in on like, you know, the truth can set us free.
Totally.
And so like, it was like a perfect example of that. And I feel amazing since I recorded that. And now that I've been bold, I got to be resolute. You know?
Thanks for the plug. Well done. So I think what's really interesting here is, you know, we talk a lot about ego and intention, you know, talking about, you know, when you're faced with a situation in life, there is the identity of who I am, what I've done, what I haven't done, and what people know me for, my reputation, whatever. And then there's this other part of you, which is the human side, right? So when you have an argument with your partner or whatever, you know, I've definitely had my fair share. You know, it's that choice between, do I want to win right now and be right, versus like, you know, but my intention is I just actually love you. And I think, you know, I see this not only in families, but, you know, in workplaces as well, you know, where what does it actually look like to share fully and to be real and vulnerable, you know? So for instance, I remember working in this one company where there was a VP of marketing who was, you know, was an older woman, and I picked up on this sort of vibe that she was kind of threatened by the younger and up and coming people, right? And so she wasn't, you know, she was at a time in her life where, you know, she was sort of transitioning out of her career, you know, but she was also still the VP of marketing. And so she was up against, you know, up and comings who were very savvy with social media and all sort of stuff, and wanting to incorporate these sort of new media ideas into the marketing plan. Now, because she was threatened by that, she just canned all the ideas, right? So she just stopped that in its tracks before it could ever get to see light. And so people were left with the experience of being disempowered, that she didn't care, she didn't get it. So she was actually kind of, in a way, only making it worse for herself, you know, because she was afraid. I remember having this conversation with her one day and say, you know, well, have you ever considered that you can not know anything about social media and you can still be the VP of marketing tomorrow? And she's like, never thought of it that way. You know, and what was interesting about it was this lack of visibility for herself, and that she actually that was possible, and she could choose that, and to actually even to improve her own career, to get savvy with social media, to be a better VP, was actually kind of getting out of her own way. And to actually be honest and real and to say, hey, I'm a VP of marketing, I know nothing about social media. But the fear of saying that truth was so great that she had already decided and convinced herself that she'd lose a job and she was irrelevant, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And simply by offering it to her as an option.
Right. I love that story because oftentimes we don't think of those things. I could definitely look at it from the perspective of if she's the VP of marketing, she is a leader, right? It's her job to ensure that the marketing is done effectively, that she's got the right people in the right places. So someone who's in the weeds doing the social media, it's probably more important for that person to have their finger on the pulse of what other people are doing in social media and to execute the best strategy or to bring it to the VP, all the different options. And, this is how we can market the product. This is, our social media strategy. So like that makes sense to me. What I also think is interesting is the word choice that you use in your story where it's like, she knows nothing about social media. It's like, there's no one these days that knows nothing about social media. Like even my grandparents, they know something about social media. So I think that that's like another one of those polarities with the language where that's like, is that even true?
Yeah.
You might not be the most well-versed person at social media. You still, if you're going to be the VP of marketing, you're going to know something.
Well, it's that hyperbole that everyone uses, right? Like, you're always doing this.
Yeah.
You've never done that. It's like, well, never? Always? Like, these extremes.
I hear that a lot in interviews and stuff. For the first time in my life, I love those for the art of storytelling. Right. Or, I always do this, or I never do this.
Yeah.
And they're so extreme, those polarities.
What was the suffering in that, right? The position. Yeah. What happens if you do? What happens if you don't?
I find those to be like really, really, really fascinating. So I do my best to be present to when I'm utilizing that language and be like, okay, is this actually my truth here, or am I being a little dramatic about it?
Effect? Yeah. What I loved about that story in the end, and this is kind of how I saw even in your podcast, was what she discovered wasn't just telling the truth and saying, I don't know anything about social media, or I know very little, or whatever. As in, I don't feel competent in social media, right? And I'm afraid of losing my job. I'm afraid of looking bad. Yeah. The response, like you have with your podcast, was not actually the doom and the fear and the wrath of fury, like of hell that she was, imagining. Yeah. People were like, okay, well, I'll help you. Yeah. Oh. And so she actually became a better VP of marketing. She actually produced the results that she actually wanted to produce, actually was safer in her role, and was actually seen as a good leader. And the access to that was being truthful. Because in the truth, then people go, well, I can help you with that. And it's recognizing that they're all on the same team, and they're actually there to help each other. So we're all on the same team. I feel a sense of desire to contribute to your fulfillment and to your success and your joy, as you may for me. I do. And it doesn't necessarily mean I'm wholly responsible for it. Yeah. But I feel like, I mean, okay, I feel like it matters to me. Even before we record this, I'm like, so Mark, what kind of, what do you look for in a woman? Because I may know some. And it's amazing how much, when people talk about his, I know I was like getting excited, but we had this conversation last night over dinner about how, isn't it amazing how when you put it out to the universe provides? And I was always like, okay, what's that about? And sort of this idea of, maybe it was from The Secret in the movie, I think it was Bob Proctor's work, right? It was this idea of, what you put out to the universe, you get back. And it's like, okay, if I was really, really rigorous with that, it's like, no, it's always been there. It's already out there. You're just not looking for it. Because what you're looking for is this. Mm-hmm. And the minute you start looking for that, then suddenly that's what you discover. Mm-hmm. And so when you start saying, well, this is the truth and this is what I'm actually looking for, whatever, like, it's actually available. That support, that love, that woman, that career success, and the joy and ease that you want to experience, it's totally available. But you got to ask. That's what you've got to look for, as opposed to not looking for the opposite of that, which is not having that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, what I got from I was thinking of that VP of marketing story. And I was thinking about your podcast, which was like how often people discover that the access to actually fulfilling on what they want to create, and with others, starts with just actually telling the truth. Yeah. Yeah. Because then people know what to do with.
Yeah, and I think it ties back to emotional intelligence, which I knew was something you wanted to talk about. It's one thing of identifying your own truth and digging a little deeper as to the why. And in the case of the VP of marketing, some of what was driving her was the fear of looking bad and losing her job versus being the best VP that she could possibly be and getting out of the way and letting her, social media wizards like cook up the best possible campaigns. So I think that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is the actual conveying of the truth to another human being, which is also scary. So it's kind of twofold, which is, I believe, is like really definition of emotional intelligence. It's processing your truth, being aware of yourself and the patterns that you are, consistently, exhibiting together with how you communicate and are interacting in this social world that we live in. So I wanted to just take a second because this is one of my just such a deep truth. And also I find this to be really ironic in that as a human beings, the greatest fear, at least that I've experienced in terms of working with so many people, are tied to self-worth, worthiness types of things. Am I good enough, for this promotion or for the life that I want to live or for the relationship? So much is tied back to that. Good enough. Am I providing enough value to others? And so to me, that comes back to being seen for who we are, right? How can you be truly worthy if you're not willing to put yourself out there and to let yourself be seen? So we all want to be loved. We all want to feel like we matter. We all want people to like look at us and be like, oh, Pauly, you are such a good guy. Thank you for being you. Thing is, if you're not letting other people see you, then you're pushing away what it is that you want most.
It's beautiful you say that. I've always had this sort of saying in my head that people are only ever responding to the relationship you have with yourself.
Yeah.
And it's that whole idea of, people simplify that down to people treat you the way that you treat yourself or whatever, the standards you accept. But it's this idea that if there is a self-love or a lack of self-love piece, that people just inherently respond to that. Yeah. It's interesting because I had this conversation with Simon last night, the co-founder of Bold and Resolute, and talking about a sort of a breakdown I had recently in a friendship. Yeah. And it's this narrative of, am I enough on my own? Because without making this person happy or without doing these things, like this pursuit of needing to prove myself to this person and that I'm worthy of love and I'm worthy of their time and I'm worthy of their attention. And then the pain of rejection and the pain of feedback, sometimes it just seems critical. That's like just for the sake of punishment or pain rather than actual constructive. And it was interesting. It was we did this little deep dive on, the not enough paradigm, because it's a sense of survival, right? Like, well, my life is improved by having you in my life, and so then it immediately creates the fear of what happens if you're not in my life. And, will I be okay? Will I survive? And the answer is, well, yes, you will. But then there's also the choosing, but I want you to be in my life. Cool. So the choosing to have you as Mark in my life as my friend is different from choosing from love, which is it's a conscious choice, versus the choosing from fear, which is because if you're not in my life, then I'm therefore ...
Yeah. And if you want someone else in your life, you need to provide positive value for them. Otherwise, they're not going to deem that relationship to be worth it. Right. And then to me, that comes back to what's the easiest way that we can provide positive value to somebody else. And like it goes back to what Dale Carnegie says in How to Win Friends and Influence People. The easiest way to provide value for another human is to make them feel valued, to make them feel important, to make them feel special. So to me, that can be as simple as like, wow, Pauly, I'm so grateful to have you in my life because you are such a caring, loving person. You're so smart. You can do anything. And when you're around, things just tend to work out and be better. Thank you for being who you are. That's my truth. And I mean, how does it feel when someone says something like that to you?
Yeah, it's interesting. Not in the midst of getting over intellectualized and lost in the work, I can do that. Yeah. There are times where it's like cool, thank you. Yeah. And there's the I am in the conscious practice of choosing to who I'm being. And on the other hand, there's the ego mind, which is like, fuck yeah, you know, like I did it, I achieved it, I unlocked it, and like I got that praise. And so I think I'm probably in the inquiry now where, thank you, like I really appreciate that, and even if you didn't, I'd be good.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's very, 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 very grounded. The kind of my come from in sharing that is it's tough enough to be a human.
Yeah.
As it is. And if you're like me, I'm tough on myself. Part of the reason why I love surrounding myself with other people is because of just the love and connection that we share, and that other people around me remind me who I am.
Mm.
And, you know, to me that, and I think relationships are everything. They're the gateway to getting what we want in life, doing the things that we can't do on our own together, which is like bringing love for shared experiences. And I'm just such an advocate of that. So I guess where I'm going with this is two things. First, if we don't have the courage to share what's really going on with us below the surface, the things that we're not willing to share publicly, then we're expecting other people to read our minds. It's kind of passive aggressive. And like, how the hell is that other person going to help you out if they don't know what your problem or your challenge is?
Yeah.
It makes it a lot more difficult. And then on the flip side of that, there's so much love that we have to give to one another. Like, I didn't have to say that to you. And like, you know, maybe it lands, maybe it doesn't. But you know what? It felt good for me to express myself and to share that with you. And like, if it makes you feel great in knowing that that's how I feel about you, or if that makes you feel good about yourself, like, I think this world could use more love. So to me, it's not just the importance of expressing for the sake of, like, you know, liberating yourself. Yes, it's great for that. It's great for having somebody else see you so that they know how they can help you out. But then it also is a vehicle to create love and connection. So for me, like, some of our hidden truths, there's just so much gold in leaning into them and bringing them to the light.
It's beautiful. You know, I think that what I heard in that is, you know, it comes back to this: we all want to be gotten, and we always use the saying in our company that nobody wakes up wanting to have a shit day.
Yeah.
You know, who wakes up going, you know what? I don't know if you've ever seen these things, but like,
that's such a good point.
There's these like interviews.
We forget that though, because we're only thinking about ourselves.
Right.
At least that's a sweeping generalization as well.
But there's these interviews every now and then you see on TV, and someone's house is burned down or something, you know, or gets robbed.
Yeah, I had a friend that happened to today
on Christmas Day or something, and it's the significance of Christmas.
Yeah.
You know, well, you know, it couldn't have happened at a worse time.
Yeah.
And it's not that I lack empathy for these people, but in my head always just immediately go to, when is a good time for your house to burn down? You know, it's that kind of thing of like, well, it's Tuesday, I haven't got much on. Why don't we burn the house down? We'll get that out of the way. And that stuff. In the realm of things that happen to you, you know, is this life can occur to you and you don't get to choose how life occurs to you, right? And so the best you can do is to survive the situation. And I think that one of the things that I've discovered in this conversation, and I've discovered along the way as well, is you always get to choose, and a great access to choosing is what we often call the listening for versus listening to, right? So listening for what someone's trying to tell you versus listening to, like the literalness of what they're saying.
Yeah.
And to riff on what you said, the same paradigm of seeing versus looking. It's the same kind of thing, right? How many times do we listen to what someone's telling us and then we're reacting versus the listening for, okay, what's this person want me to know? And I think when you give me a compliment, it's not the listening to the word the content, it's the context in which I'm responding to. So it's not the like, cool, thanks. Like, that's what you value and you acknowledge, and thank you, I appreciate that. It's but I know it's real. And I know that where it's coming from you is that you care about me to want to acknowledge what I'm doing. And that's what moves me. It's not really the content. You know, you could literally call me, you know, an idiot or something like that, but in an endearing way. And I'd probably experience the same amount of love.
Okay, interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think the same thing is with the seeing and the looking. It's we don't just want to be looked at. We want to be seen. You know, and so when I think about this whole conversation, it's this, well, how does one be seen? How does one get listened for? well, we're always listening for, and we're always actually trying to see, but what we're actually seeing and what we're listening for, if you don't tell the truth, people will only get what you're putting out.
Mm-hmm.
And what I just sort of, I guess I took away from this was, there is a practice and a courage and a willingness to choose that, and to not experience life as like, well, this happened to me and I'm doing the best I can to survive it. At some point you go, well, okay, I'm choosing whether I'm going to look at you or see you. I'm choosing whether I'm going to listen for or listen to you. And you get to do the same. And when we both decide that we want to do that, we both tell our whole truth, and suddenly people call it chemistry, or they call it magic, or they call it whatever. And it's like, no, it's a choice. It's a choice to want to create and hold space. It's a choice to make the time and space like we've done today, to be with each other and to have this conversation and to choose that. And it produces what it produces. And that's us choosing as a context, then before we take this massive action, and therefore we produce the result, which is a deepening friendship. So anyway, that's what I got from this conversation.
That was so good. That was a mic drop right there.
Well, I don't want to drop your mics. They look expensive. But thank you. Yeah. And I really appreciate you coming on the show. I love your mind, and I had a beautiful conversation. I wish we'd recorded our chat over coffee, but I was like, there's plenty more. And, and I hope there's many more to come.
Oh, you're such a joy and pleasure to chat with. And I just appreciate that you have real conversations about shit that actually matters.
Thank you.
And, I see what's happening in the news and, the fake news. And then I see social media, and I just have so much respect that you care so much that you're taking responsibility and doing your part to create the world that you seek. And that's so admirable to me.
Likewise,
so thank you for your leadership.
Likewise. Thank you for yours. So, Mark Shapiro, it's been an honor and a privilege, and thank you. Check out areyoubeingreel.com.
Yep.
You can get all the episodes on there, some of the blogs. You can see Mark's pretty face. Be sure to check out his recent episode around his full exposure. And Mark, thank you again so much for coming on, brother.
Pauly, thank you, brother.
Take care.
Much love.
See you later.